Happy game day, everybody, and welcome into Gamecock Central right on cue. We got the music going behind me. Kendall Smith here live with Wes Mitchell on before this Sandstorm, getting ready for the 3:30 kickoff Week 3 game between the South Carolina Gamecocks and the Georgia Bulldogs. South Carolina traveling to Athens to take on the number one team in the country. Wes, this is a tall task. It is a tough game for the Gamecocks. How you feeling?
I'm excited. I'm ready to see what happens. We learned a lot about South Carolina today, Kendall. I'm also excited to see what happens with this broadcast. So we do have Jack Veltri on with us as well. He is going to bring us a live look, we hope, from the sideline of Sanford Stadium. But as y'all know, technology, he's in a stadium with it's probably not 80,000 people yet, but it will be soon. Looks like there's already a lot of people there. Kendall is live from Charlotte.
Of course, they start playing the music as soon as I start talking. Our players are out there getting ready for one of our last games of the year, and it's just right on cue.
Yeah, but you're good. We can only hear you. We can't hear the background too bad.
Oh, good.
I'm in Columbia. Jack is in Athens. So, Kendall, the beauty of live anything is we don't ever really know what's going to happen. So, do we want to try this? Do we want to give this a shot?
Let's just go ahead and try it. Why not? Let's get a live look from Jack Veltri over there in Athens, Georgia. We'll see if he's able to hear us.
Guys?
We're able to hear him. Hey, Jack, how are you?
All right.
We're waiting. Hey, you can see the fans behind him. They're piling in. Like you said, Wes, this is going to be a packed game. It's the 3:30 game on CBS. We're getting a little movement from Jack there. Jack, do you have a little camera adjustment? We're getting a full look at Sanford Stadium there in Athens. Yeah. Seems like he's getting us on a little bit of a delay.
Checking in probably about 90 minutes, at the 90-minute mark. And it's been like this since. It's going to be a tough atmosphere today. So, definitely probably going to be a sellout, and it's going to be a sight to see. So South Carolina's got to bring their A game.
Yeah, so Jack, we can actually hear you pretty well. I think there is a delay on your end, but we're going to do the best we can. If you want, just keep giving us that view of the stadium, even though it is kind of choppy. But has South Carolina started warming up yet? And if so, have you gotten a look at some of the guys running around, particularly the people everybody wants to know about, like Nicky Memori, David Spalding, Juice Wells? Have you gotten any glimpse at those guys? Yeah, I don't think we have Jack. Kendall, why don't we use Jack's views and you and I just talk about this thing? Because
absolutely.
I think our delay is just it's probably a 10 or 15-second delay, so he can't quite answer us in time, I think.
It is brutal inside of those stadiums to try to get any kind of Wi-Fi, especially when you're down on the field. It's like a pit. So we appreciate Jack for at least showing us what it looks like before the game goes to air. But yeah, Wes, let's talk about it a little bit more. Obviously, this matchup huge for South Carolina. It's a tough matchup. Won't be easy to beat Georgia on their home turf. But you just mentioned that there are some of those guys that have been injured over the past few weeks for South Carolina. Who are you expecting to see out there, maybe not see out there today, Wes?
Yeah, it's a great question, Kendall. Beamer gave an update earlier this week. Nicky Memori, not 100%, but gonna play. They expect David Spalding to play. And, some of these other guys, I think I was very curious to see what they're seeing down there on the field, because I think you look at a guy like Marion Brown, sounded like, from what I was hearing, Beamer kind of had him officially as questionable. What I was hearing, kind of a game time decision, seeing how he feels today. So I think he's quietly become a really big part of South Carolina's offense, catching those short passes, turning them into bigger gains. That's something they're obviously going to have to do. They're going to need everybody, all hands on deck today, right? And, listening to the College Game Day guys today, and then also listening to Shane Beamer earlier this week during the call-in show, I thought the message was kind of clear, like, hey, they've got to play better around Spencer Rattler. We know what Spencer Rattler can do, we've seen him the last really his last 4 regular season games, add in the bowl game as well. Like he's not only given South Carolina a chance to win those games, he's like put them on his shoulders to an extent. So I think you just got to play a little bit better around him. That means all hands on deck. And Nicky Memori, how well does he move around on the defensive side of the ball? We know what Georgia has in Brock Bowers, and Bowers is a mismatch. But Memori, as you know, Kendall, big, fast, physical, highly confident. I think if I'm South Carolina, I'm maybe matching up number 21 with Brock Bowers as much as I possibly can.
Well, we know what Brock Bowers can do. It's him along with this entire Georgia team. That's why they've been one of the top teams in the country for the last several years. And you talked about it a little bit there, Wes, just the team playing around Spencer Rattler. He's been fantastic through the first 2 weeks of the season. Even with the loss to North Carolina, he was still really good for the circumstances. And we've seen him as one of the top quarterbacks in the SEC, in my opinion, so far through these first 2 weeks of play. But for US, what is that one key for South Carolina where you're like, they have to do this to have a chance? And you see him there on the screen about to hit the field to warm up.
All right, so real quick, Kendall, before I answer that question, I did want to weigh in. I was reading some of Colin's updates on the Insurance Forum. He said David Spalding moving around really well out there. Says he's getting some coverage drills in pregame. Looks fine. Let's see. Nicky Memori on the field warming up. Let's see. Keenan Nelson traveled to the game. He is on the dress list. Tyshawn Russell, the freshman, did travel. I'm about to look at the dress list and give everybody a quick update on that may kind of factor into some of these injuries as well. But real quick, Kendall, what was your question? I was reading.
Wes, this is proof that he doesn't pay attention to anything that I say on the show. Wes, the question was, what is that one thing for South Carolina where you're like, this is make or break, this position group, or this certain thing has to go well in order for South Carolina to pull off the huge upset today?
Well, Kendall, I mean, I hate to just repeat what we've been saying, like for the first 2 weeks of the season and even for all preseason, but I think you got to talk about the offensive line again. You know, fans obviously have been talking about that, and rightfully so. I mean, you have to give Spencer Rattler time to operate. I think they go into every game this season knowing they have a chance because of their quarterback. However, he can't do what he's capable of doing if you don't keep the pressure off of him. We saw that against North Carolina. He had a great game, all things considered, but it still was not enough for South Carolina to put up enough points to win that game. You're going to need some points today, obviously. You know, I think Georgia and their rushing attack, which hasn't been as good as we traditionally see it, but still that's going to be a tall task for South Carolina's defense to just hold Georgia down completely. So I think you got to score some points. In order to do that, you got to have a great game from Rattler. But in order to have a great game from Rattler, you at least have to have a solid game from these offensive tackles. That doesn't mean they have to be perfect. Doesn't mean they have to just blow people off the ball. But they've got to give number 7 a chance.
I agree, Wes. You got to give Rattler an opportunity to throw the ball, to make a decision. He needs more than just the blink of an eye to be able to do that. So hoping that the offensive line can show up today for Spencer, for the Gamecocks. Also agreed with what you said earlier. I think if South Carolina can kind of quiet Brock Bowers to a certain extent, obviously that's really, really hard to do. He is one of the best college football players in the country. But if you're able to hold him to an average game for Brock Bowers, I think that's a really good thing if you're South Carolina. So if you've got Nicky Memori on him, then you're hoping from a defensive perspective, you're able to limit him as much as possible. And I think that gives South Carolina a better opportunity to stay in this game. What do you think about the unis, Wes? We see him out there right now, the white. We got the black helmet with the South Carolina logo. What do you got on that?
Yeah, I mean, I dig it. And by the way, the connection is strengthening a little bit. We got some actual movement out there. So,
Yep.
Jack, wherever you are right now, just don't move, man. Like, you're in a pretty good spot, I think. I like the unis. That this is a throwback to last year against Clemson, right? Like, these are These are the unis they beat Clemson in. So I think maybe if you're a little bit superstitious, maybe you're kind of banking on that. Just the mental side of kind of picturing yourself winning in these on the road. I like it. I know some people like the Stormtrooper all white. I'm a fan of that as well, but I've always liked the black helmets, so I'm here for it. Also, by the way, continuing our conversation from earlier, Kendall, Amarian Brown did not make the trip, so he is a no-go today. Again, Colin Taylor just posted the travel roster for South Carolina over on Gamecock Central. That is a free read on the front page. And JT Gear, as expected, not playing. Marky Anderson, as expected, not playing. A little bit of a surprise, Tyreek Johnson, the edge rusher, defensive end, not on the travel roster as well. But that's a guy who's been dealing with something pretty much all preseason, has played through it. I think was on a pitch count, you would say, throughout preseason ball, and not making the trip to Athens. But the other guys that we expected, Eamon Worry, David Spalding, Juice Wells, Keenan Nelson Jr., all in Athens with the Gamecocks.
4 huge names right there that will be playing for South Carolina today. Obviously, super impactful players on both sides of the ball. Wes, it's interesting when you think about playing one of the top teams in the country, especially on the road. There's a couple ways that you can go about it, right? You can try to stick to a little bit more of a traditional game plan, do what you got to do, and just try to stay in this thing. Or, maybe if you're South Carolina, you want to try to switch things up a little bit. We've seen it on the special team side of things with, what everyone calls Beamer ball in South Carolina, maybe throwing a little trickery in here and there. So if you're the Gamecocks, Wes, are you trying to take this thing kind of the classic route, just do what you can do, stay in this game, keep it as tight as possible? Are you trying to really throw Georgia off their game and, go with some of those trick plays and special teams moments that we've seen in the past from South Carolina?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think we saw South Carolina be at their very best last season, Kendall, when they played kind of freely. They played with no worries. They didn't really kind of concern themselves with, okay, what if I go for it and I don't get it? They, I think, approached those games like, we know we're going to have some things go our way to win. We're going to have to steal some possessions. We're going to have to find a way to keep the offense on the field. And that worked out for them, obviously, against Tennessee, worked out against Clemson. I mean, who can forget how they go for it on 4th and short, backed up in their own territory, and throw the ball deep to Juju McDowell against Clemson? I mean, that is as aggressive as you could possibly be. They're always aggressive on special teams. So, I think if you're a fan, Kendall, you kind of have to accept that when you do those things, it increases the chances that you could get blown out as well. Like the more risk you take, there's a greater risk of, hey, I give the ball right back to Georgia. I put them in a situation to go down the field and score faster. However, if you think that's what it takes to win the game, then, by all means, I think you have to respect the fact that South Carolina is willing to take those risks a lot of times in order to do just that. So, I think they'll probably settle into the game first, get a feel for how this thing's going to play out, and then they'll, of course, make those decisions. But, I mean, you remember the Tennessee game last year, of course, very first drive of the game, South Carolina faces a 4th down, and there is no hesitation. Hey, we're going for it. We know we need 6 instead of 3 here. I'll be very curious, to see how Beamer manages this game from like that standpoint, and B, what type of game plan Dow Loggins has for his quarterback, Spencer Rattler. He talked about this being an NFL-style defense from Georgia. We know Loggins spent a ton of years in the NFL, so I'm very curious to see what he draws up and how well Rattler can execute it.
Well, as they say, you have to risk it to get the biscuit. So maybe we'll see a little bit of risk from South Carolina this afternoon and see if it pays off with a reward. But what you said there, Wes, I think is key. It's about sustaining drives offensively if you're South Carolina. You don't want your defense to have to continue to go out there to be on the field. They're getting tired. They're getting exhausted if your offense isn't able to stay out there and sustain some drives. So I think that's really important if you're South Carolina. That's where a lot of the issues came about last year with the Gamecocks is they weren't able to do that. It was quick 3 and outs. It was we're off the field and the defense is back on. And you can't have that against a team like Georgia that is so talented from the offensive standpoint. So for me, that's a huge key today if you're South Carolina. But Wes, let's get into it here as we get towards the end of Before the Sandstorm on this lovely Saturday afternoon, week 3 of college football. What is your score prediction, Wes? And let's go ahead and throw in there your key player for today's game.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to give yours away, Kendall, but I'm excited for you to give your prediction. But I do have Georgia winning. I've got it 38-24, tighter than expected. I really think this is going to be fun to find out what sort of progress South Carolina has made since week 1. And on the other side, it's going to be very cool to see, hey, is this Georgia team the same Georgia team we've seen the last 2 years that is a true national championship quality team? Or have they taken a little step back without Stetson Bennett running the show? I will say my key player, again, I said earlier, offensive line is key, but the reason for that is because Spencer Rattler is going to have to win this game for South Carolina. So I'll take the easy answer. I'll say 7 on offense. I'll say Nick Emmanwori on defense. And ultimately, I think you have to just play well enough up front on both sides, offensive line, defensive line, and linebackers. Make it matter that South Carolina has the advantage at quarterback. If this goes into a fourth quarter game and South Carolina's hanging around, we've never seen Carson Beck be put in that situation to have to go win a football game. On the other side, if you're South Carolina and number 7 has the football and you got a chance to go win this game in Athens, I think you would take that every single day of the week, twice on Saturday. And I think it'd be really fun to see what would happen if that was the case. But first of all, you just got to find a way to hang in this game, right, Kendall?
100% agree, Wes. It's not going to be easy in Athens against Georgia. I think Spencer Rattler is your key on offense. I think that on defense, it's Nick Emmanwori. I'm going to go with everything you said. Again, trying to quiet Brock Bowers. He is the star of this Georgia Bulldogs team. Everybody knows it. We saw what he did last year. We've seen what he can do. South Carolina needs to limit him as much as possible. As for my score prediction, I always do this, but I've been right in the past. I predicted Tennessee. I predicted Clemson. I predicted Texas A&M. Basically any upset that South Carolina has pulled off in the past. I have predicted Tennessee. It. Yes, I did. I predicted Tennessee. Go back, check their receipts.
I believe you. We'll check the receipts.
So predicted those games. Today I am going with South Carolina, maybe not so much because my head is telling me it's the right decision, but I'm just going with what my heart says. I think there's an opportunity to pull this off. We saw South Carolina do it back in 2019 with a team that didn't have nearly as much talent as this team has. I think, like you mentioned with Carson Beck, he's going to be put into a situation that maybe he's not quite as familiar with, especially if South Carolina hangs in this game. So I think I had South Carolina 27, Georgia 24. That might not have been my exact score, but it was somewhere around that area. I think it's going to be tight. I think it's going to be a nail biter. I think people's blood pressure is going to rise because of this game. But I did pick the Gamecocks, and we'll see if I'm right. I don't know. What do you think, Wes? Do you think I'm crazy?
We'll find out. I think there are unknowns with this Georgia team, right? Like, Can Carolina go in there and execute well enough to expose that? I think it's your question. And I think these seasons, we know these are roller coasters. You can get smashed one week and you can play the best game of your life the next. So we're still learning about Georgia. We're still learning about South Carolina. I think we'll know quite a bit more about both teams in about 3 hours. So I'm very curious. And I'm kind of dying, Kendall, I was really excited about getting this live look at the atmosphere in Athens. So I'm a little upset with the Georgia Wi-Fi. Hopefully the Georgia defense has as much trouble with communication today as well.
Oh, there you go, Wes. I don't know how long you've been sitting on that one, but that was good. I'll give you a 10 out of 10 for that one. I'm impressed. Oh, Jack is unmuting himself. Let's get a look in.
Just to see what's going on.
Yeah, Jack, you want to unmute and kind of give us a look at what it sounds like?
Yeah, you guys hear me?
Yeah, Jack, how you doing over there?
Give us a live report.
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's Georgia just came out in the field, so this place went a little nuts, to be honest. But yeah, South Carolina's been out here warming up. They were jawing with the Georgia student section, so it's been a crazy atmosphere so far. It's probably gonna be a really good game.
Already some drama. We'll see how things turn out. It's the 3:30 game on CBS, 25 minutes to kick off. So we are right up to the wire here on Before the Sandstorm. I think this is the closest we've ever got to kickoff. But Jack, we really, really appreciate you giving us this inside look at what things are like at Sanford Stadium in Athens right now. Cannot wait for the game. Excited for what's to come. Wes, I might do it for us here on Before the Sandstorm. Jack Veltri, the absolute best. We appreciate him. Definitely wish I could be there today, but always sending the best in spirit to South Carolina. And again, fans, one game does not make or break or define the season, okay? So let's just remember that as we head into today's game. We don't know what's going to happen, but just remember you're playing top team in the country on their home turf. This is not a game, as everyone knows, that South Carolina is expected to win, but I do think they can absolutely compete in this one. So Jack, thank you so much. Wes, thank you so much. We'll be back next week with more Before the Sandstorm. Little hint, little spoiler, Wes and I might be around each other next week for Before the Sandstorm. So we appreciate all of you guys tuning in. Wes, enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, Kendall.
All
Appreciate
right.
everybody. See y'all.
Thank you, guys.